Grant Cardone was my first ever podcast guest. Grant was coming over to Australia to do a big tour with Success Resources and put out a big call to action being like, hey, if you have a podcast with an Australian audience, Grant Cardone would love to be on it. I saw it come up and I was like, I haven't started a podcast yet, but I'd run podcasts before. This is a pretty good opportunity to interview a billionaire, which is not normally something that's easy to come across. And I was like, the absolute worst case scenario is that they say no. So I wrote a message. They didn't even ask me how many people download it. They just said, sure. Now they got my foot in the door. I may as well go for gold. I was like, I'd also love to interview Elena Cardone, which is his wife. And then they said, absolutely. If you want to do both, we'll do it in Brisbane. They're doing podcasts all day. And when I got there, I said to him, I was like, how have the interviews been going? He's like, well, you're the second one. From here, we had one in Sydney. The first one that we had in Sydney was actually a young guy who had never done a podcast before. So both this young guy and myself are probably two of the only people to ever have Grant Cardone as the first ever guest on our podcast, because literally all we did was ask.